So how to do build to rent is kind of the big key, but more the why. Lots of cities and state governments are demanding, we saw it in Washington a lot, they demanded a certain area bring 20,000 homes into their area because the state knew they had this many projects approved, that they were pushing the growth. They actually push people to areas that they want them to by design. So with us in the background and the experience that we have, we saw those trends and saw where they're going. So we were in the markets where they were trying to push people to. So what you may not understand is the federal government tracks this as well. And you can go to census.gov and you can look up all the data and all the facts. So for instance, let me just give you a few of them. Charlotte, North Carolina, last month had 2,847 single family homes. Only 1,424 5+ or more units, which would be considered a multifamily. Only 38 that had 5 or more buildings. So that means bigger multifamily projects. Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth had 5,657 single family, but only 65 of them were considered multifamily. Denver, another growing area, 1,912 single family, only 27 were multifamily. Houston, 4,902 single family, only 32 were multifamily. Jacksonville, Florida, we all know that's a growing one. It's actually labeled as the most affordable city in America right now. 2,231 single family homes. Only 31 of them are that multifamily component. So when we looked at that and said, where do we want to be? What makes sense? That's exactly why we picked the markets that we did. So we picked Lafayette, Louisiana. Many of you may have not heard about it. It's not necessarily Dallas, but it is in a high traffic area for not just oil and gas, but also energy and not just retail, but other industry related to oil and gas, so production and manufacturing. There is a lot of growth in that area that, again, they don't have the houses to sustain that. So when we focused on that, here's the data from the government. 100 single family homes were approved. 0 multifamily. Same is true, Mobile, Alabama. 59 single family homes, and again, 0 multifamily. What that tells us is that we're in the right place and we're there at the right time. You see, we still have to meet that housing demand, but a single family unit can go up so much faster than a very large 20 or 30 unit multifamily can go up. So we're able to get that product out there faster. And that allows us to get that certificate of occupancy and get it up and rented and back into the hands of those folks that need it, those employees that need housing now, much more quickly. So cities have reached out to us and said, hey, we love what you're doing. We want you to come to our area. Would you consider it? Again, we have to pull our data and determine if that area is of value to us. Because if we can't duplicate what's already been successful in that particular market, then it's a waste of time. Because remember, our whole goal is to help solve the housing crisis, not put a whole bunch more product out into a market that nobody can afford it or nobody wants it because the demand isn't there. There's not enough workers and or jobs and whatnot available there. So why is now the right time for build to rent? Well, the housing crisis is at records right now, so that's definitely a need, right? But as the inflation continues to go up, which they're definitely predicting it's going to do because they don't necessarily agree that it's fully corrected itself yet, as inflation continues to go up, you see this all the time. Wages don't always compensate. So it's going to take a long time when they do a correction in the market for things to bounce back for the consumer. That means the wages catch up and they can afford that again. Keeping that in mind, when we look at that and we go, okay, so if they can't afford a house right now and they can't afford to get financed or get loans approved, Sometimes it's getting the loans approved, and sometimes it's not getting the loans approved. It's they can't afford the rate. So now when your rate goes up even 2 points, you could have lost $100,000 of buying power in that market. And now if they have to choose between living in the ghetto or living in an apartment, they will pick the apartment in a better neighborhood for their family's sake instead of owning in a ghetto. See, there is a difference here, and we have to understand human psychology. So that's why now is the best time more than ever to do build to rent, and why we started back in COVID. See, we didn't just sit there and decide, oh, let's just do this. It was very well thought out. We saw what was happening in COVID. Everybody was going crazy, being locked up in their houses or apartments and not wanting to be there and wanting to have space, but not knowing what to do and how to do that. Then with the transition to more of that remote workforce housing, it allows opportunity for them to live in other areas that they could afford, but still have the comforts and all the benefits that they enjoy of having their own home. Space, pride of ownership, tax deductions for a lot of them, right? As well as the opportunity to build and create legacy wealth for their families. So now is the best time because of where we're at, not only human psychology wise, but economic wise. Those interest rates are going to keep going up. They don't necessarily say that they're done stopping yet. And people are not going to be able to afford the houses at the rates that they're currently at. So if that's the case, are the sellers going to reduce their properties $100,000? Most not. Most of them won't. They'll just pull it back off the market. A lot of people don't realize sellers don't have to sell. Sometimes they do, but they don't have to. Oftentimes they could just make it as a rental, and they just want to sell it, and then if it doesn't, they'll just rent it. So there's other choices for them as well into the industry. So that's why now is the best time for build to rent, and you're going to want to be a part of it. Why? Just like Apple, just like Microsoft, just like the crypto and the things that you wished you would have got in. Build to rent is going to be one of those that you wished you would have got in. Now, build to rent isn't available to everybody because it is accredited investors only in our offerings. And if you don't even know what an accredited investor is, you need to figure that out. How best to do that? Reach out to us. One of the key components about development that many folks don't always pay attention to, you've heard it, if they build it, they will come, from the movie Field of Dreams, but that's just not always true. You guys have probably seen housing developments that have a lot of vacancy in them, or brand new homes that got built and they're just still sitting and they haven't sold them. If you oversaturate a market, then you're not able to actually get it sold or get it rented. So you really have to look at what are the driving forces into that market. How many jobs are coming in? When are those jobs available? What is the income of those workers that will be coming in for those particular jobs? And how much of what their particular box is, or we call a buy box, how much of that product is currently available? So for instance, if I go into a market that only has minimum wage jobs coming in, and let's say the minimum wage worker in that area can only afford a $100,000 house, and everything in the market is $200,000 house, I know for a fact they're going to be renting a house. They will not be buying, they will be renting. So now, if you're only a minimum wage worker and your income is capped at, say, $100,000, you can only afford so much rent. If you go more than 30% of the income of your monthly gross income into your housing allowance and you go above that, most of the data shows that you're setting yourself up for failure. So everybody wants to try to live below that, and live below their means or even just get by. So if you're a minimum wage worker and your income is, say, $60,000 and you have $5,000 a month, well, 30% of that means you can't go above $1,500 a month in rent or housing payment. So if you can't go above $1,500 and we build houses that the rent's $2,000, those are going to sit vacant. We have to stop and think through that. So all the data that we're driving into and digging up that is out there for anybody who wants it, that's us doing the work so you don't have to. That's us looking at this and going, okay, if all of these jobs coming in, are they minimum wage, are they middle class, are they C-level, what are these different jobs coming in? And are they transient jobs? That's another key factor. See, some folks don't realize in the oil and gas industry, different plants go through cycles, and every 2 to 3 years they shut the plant down for sometimes 6 months to a year to do maintenance and different things like this. And so all of those workers are going to have to go somewhere. Or maybe it's an area that is heavily populated with military bases. A lot of times too, ships come in. We see that in the Washington all the time, right? The ships come in, and along with it, you have 7,000 sailors coming on board, but then you also have their families. So that whole area for that time that ship is stationed there needs more houses available. But then when the ship leaves and goes to another port, well, all those families usually go somewhere else as well. And if you don't understand that, you could be putting product out there that's unsuccessful. And that's unfortunately what gets some developers into hot water. They build a product that they don't understand the need of their market, or something out of their control can kind of tank what their predictions were. So we're always looking at the data for that purpose, because data doesn't lie. It doesn't have any feeling, doesn't have any emotion, and it's not going to change. It's just the facts. So when objectively look at it, and not get so emotionally attached to something that we want to do. Like, I just want to build these custom homes, or and we see that happen. Developers do a phenomenal job and they take great pride in ownership, but they can sometimes take so much pride of ownership, they blow the budget, they go above and beyond because they want it to look a certain way because their name is on it, and not necessarily remember or understand the big picture about why they're doing that, or why they're staying in within this budget, or why they're doing this or that. And so we have to work hand in hand with our developers, and that's the benefit of working with American Made Home Solutions. We've been in business 25 plus years. Our developers have been in business doing the same exact thing 25 plus years, and our finance underwriting 25 plus years. So we know how to kind of curb those ebbs and flows. We're looking at the market information. We're looking at when are these units coming available, when are these units coming available. We're looking at our competition. Who is our competition? Well, there's other businesses that are doing what we're doing. Just like if you saw the Airbnb and short-term rental industry, now the hotels are jumping on board, and now they're advertising on Airbnb as well. And they're actually buying up whole old extended stays and turning them into their particular brand of short-term rental. So they're doing the same thing. So some of our competitors, Lennar Homes, some of the big builders like that are our competitors. But you know why we don't necessarily feel that they're a competitor to us? Two things. Many folks don't realize that if you build a bad reputation, governments and planning and that kind of stuff, they generally pay attention to that. So when they're looking at organization, for instance, DR Horton, they're in a lot of hot water in quite a few states. Either they're not following code, they're not getting their inspections done, or they're bribing officials to get inspections done, and or the quality and the workmanship isn't there, and there's a whole bunch of lawsuits from the folks that have moved into their properties. And so things like this can happen, and it gets them into hot water. When it gets them into hot water like that, do you think that city or local government's going to want to allow them to build more? No, they're going to put a brake on them. So that's the best thing about working with American Made Home Solutions. We've actually been approached by local city governments and said, hey, we saw what you're doing over here. We saw what you're doing over here. And we really want you to come do that in our area. So when you're being approached by them, you realize that you're building a reputation that matters. You have to have some integrity to do so. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. Have that integrity to get a good product out there that matters to the individual who's living in our homes. Notice I say the individual, not the resident, not the tenant. Why? Because they're people. And to us, they're people, just like you are. Your investments, they matter. Just like they matter to you, the home that that person lives in matters to us. We want them to feel happy and excited to come home and thankful and glad that what we did made a difference in their life. If we're building a terrible product that nobody wants and all they do is complain and gripe and moan about it, or worse yet, makes people sick or something like you've seen sometimes happen, those are things we don't want that. And so just like you as an investor, you don't want to do the work. You don't want to dig up all the data and do all the boring stuff that I just went over with you. You definitely don't want to be the one out there building. You don't want to be dealing with the individuals that are living in those homes and the toilets and the complaints and the work orders. You don't want to do any of that stuff. But you do know that you want to make good returns in real estate. Those are things that we take care of, all the stuff that you don't want to do, so you can keep doing what you want to do, which is make good returns in real estate. So that's why where the build to rent is going on matters. Who is doing the build to rent matters. Why build to rent is so important right now, and why you want to be a part of it. And you can get involved by simply clicking down below to get our free ebook on 16 questions that you should be asking about any passive income opportunity. There's lots of opportunities for you to make good returns on your investment, whether it's in self-storage, whether it's in real estate, whether it's in car washes, ATM machines. There's lots of opportunities out there. But ultimately, the questions that you should be asking are still kind of the same ones. So we've put those together for you in our free ebook. So click the link below. It'll simply ask for your name and email so that we can email you the book, and then you're going to completely free. No strings attached, I promise. If you decide you'd like to continue and be a part of our newsletter, then we'll give you that opportunity, and you can get our newsletter every single month. You can hear about the different markets we're in and why we're in those markets and what we're doing there, and learn about the people and the lives that we're able to impact. If that's something that interests you and you want to be a part of that, make sure that you click on the link below. When we talk about build to rent, although it's a phenomenal product and it's a great opportunity for many folks, it's not always the same fit for the right folks. So when you stop and think about that, if you're looking for an opportunity that's going to give you good cash flow right away, build to rent is not going to be that opportunity. You see, we're taking raw land and we're developing it and we're building homes on it, and that takes time. That takes permitting time, that takes weather-related time, that takes time for that to happen. So you don't get cash flow until people move in, and then the property stabilizes, and then you can start paying dividends. So that's going to take at least a year, sometimes two. Just depends on the project, the size of the project. And so if you're looking for a cash flow play, I would suggest that you put part of your investment in something that's going to give you that cash flow. Any of our regular multifamily renovations is going to do that for you. But on our build to rent, this is where you're going to create that legacy growth. This is where you're going to get phenomenal depreciation, right? You're just like in a normal renovation, we still get depreciation too. And that's huge when you're building things. So you're still going to get that depreciation. You're still going to get the tax advantages. You're still going to get that K1. You're also going to get a very large payout at the end. So although your investment can receive a preferred return, that's going to be getting banked. As it's getting banked, you're going to get that. We have to report it to the IRS. It's documented. Lawyers, everybody is watching it. So it's protected in that area. But as it's getting banked, then when those cash flows starts coming in and we're able to get that back to you, in the end, our goal isn't always to sell. You see, sometimes the goal is to hold on to what you've got because you know exactly what you have. So we're creating massive legacy wealth by refinancing and getting those investment monies returned and then cash flowing at that point. We built the product. We know exactly how long it's going to last. We know exactly when those hot water tanks are going to need to be replaced, when those roofs, all of that. And because we also are the builders, we hold all the warranty information. You see, sometimes that doesn't transfer. So if we were to sell, some of the warranty information, say for the appliances, say for different contractors, they wouldn't transfer at a sale. But some of them do, but not all of them. So those are benefits as well. So the build to rent opportunity is really a legacy growth opportunity that we want you to be able to take advantage of as well.